video is sponsored by me. Well, it's just me talking about my OCs, but I do have an important announcement, so please stay tuned. Hello, greetings starlings. If this is your first time here, my name is Lux and I'm your local internet magical NB. I make a lot of OC and magical girl related content. I created this channel to document my journey towards making my dreams of publishing my stories into a reality. Right now, the only thing I've shared on my journey are sneak peeks of my current story, Star Nights, through my YouTube shorts. I'll be making a video in the future discussing its lore and its characters. That story and its characters has a lot of history from different iterations and were created in different moments of my life. Some of the characters are my oldest OCs, even some of them are my fan OCs. My oldest original character, Haru, that I still use to this day, originated as an OC for a Miraculous Ladybug fanfic, which I wrote in my English assignment for the 4th grade. I will leave it at that, as an entire video could be made about them and their evolution throughout the years. The main point I'm trying to make is that my fan OCs were a very important part of my creative journey, as much as I didn't want to give them too much credit for the longest time. I was very much embarrassed and was ready to take them to my grave, never sharing them until today. Lately, I've been teaching myself to appreciate my beginnings as an artist and hopefully inspire other artists who might be ashamed of their old creations, which is why I decided to share with you my old My Hero Academia OC and how I redesigned her into a magical girl. I recommend getting cozy, maybe bringing out a sketchbook and drawing along as I bring you through a journey through memory lane. I created this OC during an interesting moment of my life. I was in high school, and it was also when anime was more accessible here in the West. It was now cool to talk about your favorite animes. For the longest time, I kept my interest in my art to myself, not really having anyone to share them with. But when I saw people talking about the shows I enjoyed, like My Hero Academia, and share their fan OCs, it inspired me to do the same and created Sakura Harukawa. She was very much an ideal version of myself and was a combination of my favorite things at the time. She shared a lot of traits of many people's first fan OCs. She had pink hair, conventionally attractive, and was super popular. Everyone in Class 1A adored her, despite the fact all she did was sit around and look cute. She even had her own modified school uniform just to show how special she was. Her quirk is in-universe is a word to describe someone's superpower is, like her name suggests, had to do with cherry blossoms. As for limitations, she either didn't have any or I don't remember, which if that's the case shows how hardly the limitations actually impact her. I also believe her love interest was either supposed to be Shoto Todoroki or Tamaki Hamajiki. Sadly, any character bios I wrote down was lost in time. I likely purged all my old documents due to embarrassment of my old writing back then. Writing was and is a skill that doesn't come naturally to me, unlike with art. It's a skill I want to improve on, as it's quite important to achieve my future goals, and I want to be better at articulating my thoughts. Plus, it's really good to write down all my ideas because I have a memory of a goldfish. What I do remember of what I wrote back then was that she was pretty much my version of a yandere trope. It was around the time I read the manga Happy Sugar Life and watched a playthrough of You and Me and Her, a love story, and Doki Doki Literature Club. I was definitely not the targeted age demographic when consuming those medias, but that's partly what influenced my direction with Sakura. A sweet bubbly personality on the outside to hide her dark obsession and past. She was someone who desperately wanted approval and love of her peers despite her interests that may be considered weird or not normal. She was very much like Himiko Toga and her backstory, but pink. Unlike the way Himiko Toga was portrayed and written, my writing reflected, well, my lack of understanding and the weight of the subject matter I was addressing. Some of the sensitive topics I discussed were ones I shouldn't have tackled. For the longest time as a kid, I didn't see any issue or thought it was problematic because many of the struggles she personally faced were similar to my own. Sakura was, like I said, a very ideal version of myself, but she shared a lot of similarities with me. To get a bit personal, a lot of her struggles of connecting with people and constantly seeking love and acceptance of others, that was me. It was what I struggled with a lot. I'm doing much better now mentally, but back then it was a darker time for me. I created characters, as sad as it sounds, so I didn't feel alone. I wanted someone to relate to, someone I could share my interests with, and someone who would accept me for me. She embodied a lot of my interests at the time, like when I was getting into Japanese culture, which is why she's based off cherry blossoms. She dressed the way I wanted to dress. She had this like fluffy white cat jacket, and she was very pink. Very, very pink. Did I mention I like the color pink? Have you seen the Sakura Miku collection? Many people might consider or maybe call this cringe, but it's what made me happy during a dark moment of my life. For the longest time, I was ashamed of her and myself for both my old art and my writing, and her being a fan character in general. Artists who make fan OCs online are often bullied. It's not criticism if your attention is to point and make fun or just use words like Mary Sue or self-insert instead of giving genuine advice that might be helpful for those who are, most of the time, younger artists, children. Even I started using words like cringe or Mary Sue when describing Sakura without even thinking of the real root issue that I had with the character. Of course, not all fan OCs are made by kids, and fan characters can be validly criticized. But I feel like a lot of the time, most fan OC creators are beginners and having fun. This is a form of engagement in their fandom, something they love, and it inspired them to create, which is wonderful. While yes, a lot of these designs are the same and self-indulgent, to a lot of people, this was their start. I think more people should be less hard on themselves for their old stuff that they make. While Sakura wasn't my first OC, she meant a lot to me and was a part of my growth as an artist. So much has changed over the years, now that I have a platform and an audience that there's so many of you who tune into my silly little OCs. I adore my OCs as they carry a part of me, both as a person as well as my reflection of my art journey. I've been teaching myself while my content isn't for everyone, it's unmistakably me. My art and my stories are very self-indulgent, taking aspects of my favorite things like magical girl media while creating stories that come close to home. I want to create something that people who have similar experiences to me can relate. And in a way, my art is like a love letter to my younger self. I think the next step for my creative journey is being able to face and embrace the past. As embarrassing as it is, Sakura Harukawa was important and brought little luck through a difficult time. So maybe it's time to revisit Sakura. The last time I touched Sakura was after my My Hero Academia phase. I tried to put her in an old story with some of my active OCs. I redesigned her a couple of times, and I eventually took one of these designs and combined her with another character to create Akira, who's my current protagonist for my Magical Girl series Star Knights. Once I started working on that story, Sakura mostly faded into obscurity to never see the light of day. Until now. Going into this, my goal is to have as much fun as possible while preserving elements of her old design, such as keeping her name and her main motifs. This is how I usually plan out a design for a character. First, I set up a personal goal and things to keep in mind while designing. Sometimes I get into the sketching, but it's always good to collect a ton of references. Personally, when I collect references for designing a new character, I separate them into different categories, such as a mood board for vibes, a character inspo for any characters that inspire the direction, and a section for their clothing. I have mine separated into two sections, one for the civilian design and one for the magical girl form. That's right, Sakura is gonna be a magical girl. I can't say this enough and will not stop saying it. I love magical girls. I always have and always will. From the transformation sequences to the magical spells to the cute mascot characters and defeating the bad guy with a magical beam of rainbow and power of friendship. I also added additional categories that aren't necessary, like pets and their Pokemon team. This is just how I separate them. If you want to separate your references into like specific accessories or just keep them all in one reference board, you can. There is no one way to do this, and it's okay if you do things differently. You don't even need to use Pinterest. I just use it because it's a lot more easier to me, not sponsored. Once I gathered all my references, I started drawing the civilian design. When it comes to my characters, I tend to pick different aesthetics and fashion. For example, my character Akira takes inspiration from decora, a style that revolves around wearing a ton of accessories and it's very colorful. Similar to when I designed Sakura, I take a lot of inspirations from things I love, like different Japanese subcultures. It finds its way into my art. I really wanted to design a character based on Gyaru. Gyaru is a Japanese subculture that is very popular in the 1990s to the early 2000s and had a bit of a revival recently. It was very fun collecting different outfit ideas and browsing what specific kind of style she would wear, since there's many different sub-styles of Gyaru. I ended up going for Hime Gyaru because she's my little princess and I'm a sucker for frills and the fluffy hairstyles. I gotta confess, this design was partly easy to make because it was felt very much up my alley. And I did draw Sakura for her birthday a while back, so this is my first time drawing her redesign, but it's an updated version. I felt like the first round wasn't Gyaru enough. It was Gyaru or Gyaru. I felt like the first time wasn't Gyaru enough. It was Gyaru inspired for sure, but it also felt too safe. Gyaru is all about being bold and extravagant. I went for some pretty bold and vibrant colors. I tend to stick to more, while still vibrant, pastel shades of colors. After some changes, she came out a lot more how I imagined her to look. I think the Gyaru style fits her perfectly. In her original design, her hair was dyed without much reason behind it other than I really wanted pink hair. Now I imagine she dyes her hair because she wants to stand out. Maybe story-wise, she was inspired by other magical girls who she admires and dreams of becoming. Maybe she chooses to stand out because she doesn't want to be forgotten. Deep down, she wants to form connections with her peers and be loved. Like her original design, she struggles with her identity and puts on a facade that people will like. That could be a big reason why she wants to be a magical girl and needs to unpack all that. I think its bold style, like Gyaru, fits perfectly with Sakura's story of embracing her interests and being unapologetically herself. I could even have her magical girl form reflect where she is in the story. As she finds her footing, her design becomes less cliche magical girl and better representation of her. For this video, I drew her in her basic magical design, which is very inspired by iconic magical girl media. I took inspo from a lot of Precure designs as well as my current obsession, which is this magical girl skin of Juno from Overwatch 2. I don't even play the game, but she is too cute. Hello? The colors? The sharks? The little sharks that come out of her bag? I took a lot of inspiration from different tropes I picked up from all the magical girl shows I've been watching. See? Being chronically online has benefits. One thing I've picked up a lot is the change of hair color. Either it's to their main color, or a more vibrant version of their hair. Even Madoka Magica does this. It isn't as noticeable, but if you compare the civilian designs to the magical girl forms, you can see that the hair is much more muted color. I noticed this after my third or fourth rewatching of the series. Sakura was very much easy for me to design. I've been meaning to make more typical magical girl theme OCs. You would think I would already have one by now. Even with pink, I'm surprised it took me this long to design someone with a pink color scheme. My goodness, I wonder how much I said pink in this video. Her design is very different from how she looked before, but I'm overjoyed with how she looks. She had a lot more personality and she's been on my mind ever since. I brainstormed a lot about it. Originally, I considered putting her in my Star Knight universe, which is a world where being a magical girl is an occupation. It's kind of a combination of being a celebrity and a soldier that fights against these threats called the Void. That's a simple version of it, and I'll go into further detail in a future video. I don't think though she would fit in the main story, as the main cast is quite big with 8 of them. Another idea I had is to create a spin-off that pays homage to her origins by having her attend a magical girl school or a training facility. This school could prepare students to become magical girls. Perhaps the funds it receives will go into the many personal projects of Celestia, the main antagonist of my story. I also think though it might be a good idea to just create a new story. I thought it'd be fun if this story's cast was a bunch of my old OCs, giving them a new chance to shine instead of being lost to time. What inspired me to go into this direction was the result of another character's redesign. Originally, I was just going to redesign Sakura for this video, but as soon as I finished her redesign, I was reminded of another scrap character that would be a perfect addition as a secondary main character. This is Amay Harakawa. Yes, his last name is also Harakawa because he was related to Sakura. But he wasn't a My Academia OC. Oh no, it was a lot more complicated. If you remember, I quickly mentioned how I added Sakura to my older stories before scrapping her completely. I decided to make her related to another existing OC that you might have heard the name of before. Yes, it's Haru. I cannot talk about anything without bringing her up again. He's probably isn't too happy with it either. Amay's connection to this family tree is that he was the future child of Haru and Akira back when they had red hair. It was a choice. Other than that, he was the protagonist of a spin-off version of an old story that was heavily inspired of the Persona series. In general, his aesthetic was based off Persona 5 and Into the Spider-Verse, as the movie just came out and I just got into the Persona series. Outside of his inspiration, unlike with Sakura, there isn't much I could tell you. His entire character revolved around being the future child of my OC, and I don't think I could tell you his interest. I did make a piece of him graffiti, though I likely drew that because Miles in the Spider-Verse made graffiti. He did have a kitsune motif, and his powers was the ability to create illusion, as kitsunes are commonly associated with illusions and wearing disguises. Maybe it's something I can keep for his redesign. Overall, he will be very different. I want him to be the perfect contrast to Sakura, being the complete opposite. I swapped out his red color scheme to a blue one to contrast more with Sakura's pink, even though green is supposed to be the opposite color of pink on the color wheel, but other than me not being the biggest fan of green, when it comes to picking the color schemes for my characters, I take in consideration of how we as societies view certain colors. Like red and blue, they're often viewed as opposites. There are a lot of different reasons of why that's the case. A lot of colors are also associated with different emotions, like blue is much more of a calming color, while red gives the opposite effect. Another reason is just how society market these colors. Like for example, Pokemon Red or Blue. Pokemon in general continues this trend of having the games be the opposite of each other, and continues to use red and blue to share the differences. This isn't just Pokemon. We have Sonic and Shadow, Asuka and Rei, Leo and Ralph, Jinx and Vi, Kyoko and Sayaka, and Phoenix Wright and Miles Edgeworth. That was a very long-winded explanation on why I picked the color as blue, but like I said, I wanted him to be Sakura's narrative opposite. I went with the same logic when it comes to his clothing and his overall vibe. I went for a more futuristic direction and looking at cybercore aesthetics. I started watching Evangelion for the first time and have been really enjoying it. A lot of his character board is filled with screenshots from that show, so it definitely was a big part of my inspiration in this direction. I struggled a bit finding a visual motif outside of his color palette and the futuristic vibe. I really enjoy pairing my characters with a symbol that represents them, like Sakura and her cherry blossoms. It had me really stumped for a while because I really didn't know what I wanted. In general, I wanted this potential magical girl group to have a motif that ties them all together. For this group in general, I plan on having a core group of 4 members with a secret 5th one joining much later. It's a play on a common trope that's found in magical girl shows that I've noticed, especially in Precure. Since Sakura's motif is very important, cherry blossom representing the arrival of spring, it would be fun if the entire group's motif was different seasons. Figuring that out made things a lot more easier, as all I had to do was assign a season to Amay and his motif would naturally come from there. Well, that's what I thought, but oh my gosh, why does he have to be so difficult? Sakura came so much more naturally. I considered a winter motif and changing his name to Yuki, as Amay means rain in Japanese, and I tend to associate rain with spring, which is already Sakura's season. My brain felt like it was gonna go kaboom, until my boyfriend reminded me that autumn is the proper opposite to spring. While the color blue isn't usually associated with autumn, he suggested looking into Tsukimi, also known as moon viewing, or the Harvest Moon Festival, which takes place every autumn. The moon motif perfectly complements his color scheme and ties in into autumn. It would even tie in Sakura's motif of cherry blossoms, which are celebrated during Hanami, a flower viewing festival. Yippee! I incorporated his new motif throughout the design. I'm not sure how well it reads, but his earphones are meant to look like crescent moons, and his belt has like the lunar phases. I still gotta figure out a name for his magical boy design. Blossom was an obvious choice for Sakura, being tied with cherry blossom, and in a way, she was blooming into herself. Personal growth. Flowers. It could also be the reason that when I was looking back at drawing her high ponytail looked like Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls. I will figure out his name soon. Maybe suggest some ideas in the comments and I will post a poll and you can help me decide a name that isn't Shiny Umbreon. His design is a blend of futuristic and traditional Japanese elements. It's kind of the vibe that I was going for with his first design, but I really didn't do a good job conveying that other than giving him a kitsune mask. With the mask and the scarf, he kind of started looking like a ninja. I was trying to do something funky with the scarf, making it stylishly look like the clouds in like traditional pieces. For the character sheet, I admit it does not look like that. In general, I've been trying to keep my designs interesting while also being simple to read and easy for me to redraw. Through making animatics, I've noticed I tend to forget certain design aspects. It'll certainly be handy if I made a bunch of character turnarounds alongside their outfits. I'll get to it one day. I'll just keep telling myself that. With the direction I went with for both Sakura and Amay's magical outfits, I gave them a lot of tech gear, like the heart headgear for Sakura and the Amay's mask and shoes. I want to incorporate a ton of different gadgets based on the technology of the early 2000s, which made me think of maybe their powers are from these gadgets instead of being born with them. I did some drawings for their transformation devices. Sakura is a flip phone, while Amay is an MP3 player. I drew his civilian design listening to music. I imagine that he has a hobby of making his own music, and overall quite artistic. Kind of a way of me paying homage to that one art piece I made of him drawing graffiti. I could still have his powers being illusions that ties in with him being an artist, but also I'm open on trying different directions with him. Another aspect I changed of him was his name. I decided to name Sora, which means sky. I felt like Sora and Sakura came off the tongue nicely. I would have picked a name that meant autumn, but I already had a character whose name was Aki. Now that I mention him, it's a good time to bring up that I did struggle a lot with trying to make those two not look alike. The two of them shared similar color schemes, and I even gave him the same freckles. I swapped the freckles out for more birthmarks and piercings while adding yellow that came out a little more lime into his hair. I was also so close to giving him blue eyes since Sakura's main colors are the same color as her eyes, but Aki's eyes were also blue, so I changed it to yellow. Funny enough, he shares a resemblance with Aki's old design as he had yellow eyes. Honestly, partly why he reminded me of Aki so much was because of when I was brainstorming Sora's dynamic with Sakura. When I played Sakura in an old story, she was best friends with Aki. Their dynamic was very much sunshine and rain, extroverted popular girl with introverted loner, and excuse me, he asked for no pickles. And I miss that. I am just a sucker for the grumpy and sunshine relationship dynamic, not even in a romantic context. I just love seeing two people who are unlikely to get along because of their very different personalities, but over time, as they go through shared experiences, they learn to understand and appreciate each other's differences while discovering similarities. By the end, both individuals can learn something valuable from each other. With the new story, I don't think I can picture Sakura or Sora for being a couple. I mostly picture them being best friends and also... Sorry, it's my characters and I'm the magical NB Lux, and they wouldn't be my characters if they weren't part of the LGBTQ community. Honestly, when I put them together and looked at their final designs, they started to remind me of something. I believe now is a good time to mention a fact about Sora. Back when I originally designed him, he was intended to be a trans man. I'm going to keep that aspect about him as it's very important and it wouldn't sit right with me if I changed that. As for the new direction for Sakura's character, I decided for her to be a trans woman. I'm still figuring out aspects of the story, such as if Sakura starts her journey pre-transition and discovers herself throughout the story, or similarly to Sora, who is already out, and deal with the diverse struggle of being out as trans. For the character sheet, I pretty much drew her how she would look like if she socially transitioned. Regardless of what direction I go with, I want both of them to be trans, and the theme of identity is one I would like to write about. It's something very important to me as a creator to write stories and characters that look like me, as well as others with similar backgrounds. I'm over the moon how these two turned out. I think my younger self would be happy to see me bringing these characters back with a fresh coat of paint. I know for certain these two idiots will be living in my mind rent free. I already have plans for them. So many animatic shorts. If you made it this far in the video, I wanted to thank you for listening to me talk about my old fan OCs and joining me as I redesign them and talk about my story ideas. Once I have a clearer idea of their world and stories, I'll surely make an updated video documenting any new developments. But if you can't wait till the next video, I have some promising news. It's the very important announcement you've been waiting for or forgot about from the start of the video. If you want to see more of these characters or many of my other characters, I have a Patreon. There's a lot of behind the scenes work and planning I do for my videos and stories, and signing up, you can be the first to see and participate in the creative process. I plan to host many polls and work in progresses alongside concept art of my stories. This will be a great way to support me in my dreams. It allows me to make upgrades towards the channel. I'm currently unemployed and a student, so any amount of support is truly appreciated. I want to continue making entertaining and polished content for all of you, and supporting me either on Patreon or through commissions, or just simply engaging with this video will really make my day. Feel free to let me know what you think of my ideas for my magical girl story, and if you're open to it, I would love to hear if you had any fantasies in the past or current ones. I also in general just love hearing about other people's characters and stories. Thank you so much for all the support you've provided for my shorts and helping me reach 500 subscribers. It feels surreal and I can't thank you enough for helping me achieve my dreams. And thank you for stopping by. I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.